So it is a very quiet February morning here in Nicosia. Today, 5th of February 2023, is the presidential election. And it should be interesting. There's no clear front runner. There are 3 candidates that are seen as the strongest, but polls show that none of them look like they'll have a 50% majority. So I am here walking around looking for their respective political offices just to see what I can find to write a story about what I observe during the election process. I'm using Google Maps, which works offline, to find my way to the different political offices of the parties that either the candidates are directly running for or candidates who are running as independents are backed by. I don't have a Cypriot SIM card, so I just simply set Google Maps into motion before leaving the safety and comfort of the hotel Wi-Fi. And yeah, it works here while I'm walking around. It's guiding me to where I need to go. One thing I'd nearly forgotten about walking around Cypriot cities is that Cyprus is one of the 3 EU member states where the vehicles drive on the left rather than the right. So the others being Malta and Ireland. And of course there is fair UK, which unfortunately made a pretty bad decision to leave the EU in my view. But yeah, so it takes a little bit of getting used to after not having been in this part of the world for a long time. That actually went fairly well. I went by the Democratic rally offices and I met one of the bodyguards of the outgoing president, and he gave me a little bit of the dirt. There wasn't too much of a visual, just basically took a couple of photos of an office building, but it was still really interesting. And yeah, so now I'm going to the AKEL party, which is the left-wing party across town. So I'm just walking from one to the other with my offline map. I have to say, just talking to those policemen outside the president's political party headquarters got me kind of fired up. This is the first time I've done anything like that in a long time, which is going to a place where I'm not from, where I don't live, where I don't have any ties, and just knocking on doors and getting into other people's business. I live for this stuff. It's funny, you see a huge glitzy bank building like this tower behind me with the windows all blacked out called Eurobank Cyprus. And you have to ask yourself, some of that Russian oligarch money in there? Maybe even some Ukrainian oligarch money? You gotta wonder. So I'm here at the offices of AKEL, which is the traditional progressive left-wing party here on the island. It's rooted in Marxism-Leninism, and it is backing the candidate Andreas Mavrogiannis. There's not much going on here. Just some police, I think, on election day duty. But otherwise, there's not much action in sort of a visual or kinetic sense. Okay, so I had a decent amount of success going to the first 2 places that I'm looking for. The DISI office, which is the ruling party, and the AKEL office, which is basically the communist party. Now I'm trying to go to the DIKO party, which is perhaps the 3rd most important party in Greek Cyprus. And this is going to be a really long walk. And I was tempted to take a taxi, but I actually got such an early start to my day, something I'm not used to in New York, that what else do I have to do besides walk from one side of the city to the other? One notable difference between Larnaca and Nicosia is that here in Nicosia, government signage at least is trilingual: Greek, Turkish, and then English. It's kind of hard to believe that Cyprus joined the EU almost 20 years ago now. In May of 2004, there was an event that was big in this part of the world that was pronounced as the Big Bang, which was when 10 new member states joined the EU all at once, overnight. And Cyprus, alongside Malta Slovenia, Slovakia, Czechia, Hungary, Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia all became new member states. And the EU grew in size immensely from one day to the next. And so the interesting case of Cyprus is that of these 10 states, it was the only one that didn't have sovereign control over all of its territory. And thus, Cyprus is ineligible to ever join another well-known supranational organization, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Because one of the stipulations of being a NATO accession candidate is that you cannot have an existing territorial integrity issue or territorial dispute. So Cyprus, although being here in what some might derisively refer to as a NATO lake, the Mediterranean, with NATO members Greece, Turkey, Italy, Spain, Cyprus is left out of that club. It's within the jockeying between Greece and Turkey, which is the main sort of cleavage within the NATO alliance. Another little interesting bit about Cyprus's integration into Europe as a modern political entity is that, like Ireland, Cyprus is not part of the borderless Schengen agreement. So when I flew the other day from Athens to Cyprus, I got a separate entry stamp here into the Republic. So that's an interesting facet that sets Cyprus a little bit apart. So Cyprus is integrated into it is part of the Eurozone, it is part of the European Union, but it's not part of everything. It's not part of the Schengen, and it's not part of NATO. After seems like walking across about half of known Nicosia, I arrived here at the offices of the Deco Party, which I believe is about the third most important party in the presidential election. And I just wanted to do a comparison of the main parties, DC and Ekel, which are in the heart of Nicosia. And this party office is a bit forlorn. It's in somewhat of a ramshackle old house on the very edge of the city. But still an interesting walk here, nonetheless, on election day. One of the reasons that I came to Cyprus to begin this trip, these travels, if you will, is because it's what I call a sort of an in-between place. You know, is it Southeastern Europe? Is it the Middle East? Is it the Mediterranean? Is it the European Union? It's a place with a bunch of different identities. You know, it's part of the ancient Greek world. It's part of Byzantium. It's, very much part of the modern world. You know, it's trying to function as best it can as a flawed Western democracy. And part of why I love places like this is that I never like to, in all my years of war reporting, I never like to go to a place, I don't parachute into a place and suddenly just go straight to some sort of combat situation. I like to move in gradual increments rather than some sort of punctuated equilibrium, where you just, somehow drop yourself into the middle of Baghdad back in the 2000s. And so this place is kind of a melting pot of all of these different vibes because of where this island sits in the world. And in that sense, to me, it's an ideal starting point, just sort of moving east. From here, you can go to Lebanon. From Lebanon, you can go to Syria. Syria to Iraq. And you can kind of keep ratcheting up the complexity of the places that you go. And Cyprus, because of how cosmopolitan it is, all the languages that are spoken here, all the ethnic groups that live here, all the different problems that this island has, the problems are much more accentuated in nearby Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, and so forth. And so this place is kind of a perfect starting point. Having the most chill possible day, walking around Nicosia on a Sunday in February with the elections going on, almost all businesses are closed. I was walking down Makarios Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare in the city, and I tried to take a picture of a particular political party headquarters, and I was yelled at and run up to by 2 police officers who told me that I was being too obvious, that I didn't have permission to be here, that, you know, what was I doing here? They threatened to take me into the police station, and I stated that this is, I believe, an open democratic society, and that someone should be able to do journalism as they wish, you know, within the common boundaries of a civil society. And finally, they just told me to walk away. I thought they were going to try and possibly grab this GoPro, but so yeah, that was really tense making. This is a pretty surreal feeling. I just visited a Catholic church that is on the Green Line, separating North and South Nicosia, separating the Greek-controlled side from the Turkish-controlled side. And there are about maybe 24 Filipinas in there praying and lighting candles. And then I step outside, and the muezzin is calling out the azan, the call to prayer from the Turkish side. And it's the call to prayer from the Turkish-controlled part of the city, which is just a few meters away, is actually echoing off the limestone block Catholic church here in Orthodox southern Cyprus. It's really something to experience. After the incident with the police officers outside the far-right party headquarters, I ended up going back to the hotel and talking to the guy at reception, who is a complete sweetheart. He told me, I was asking him if I could come check out a polling place, and he told me about this place just several hundred meters from the hotel where voting was still going on. And I just got caught in a really intense downpour. What a hell of a day this has been. Kind of loving it though. Here in Nicosia, I am in front of the UN buffer zone, known colloquially as the Green Line. Tomorrow is the presidential election here. It's kind of a tight race, although some kind of cynical locals are saying that they think it's fixed, which is not surprising in the wider Mediterranean world. And I am just doing, it says no photography here, but there's nobody around or no videography. So I am just doing a little exploring here of the old city and just kind of still learning the GoPro. It's cold and gray, as you can see, and yeah, so let's explore. My GoPro tripod was about an inch short to be able to reach the juggling ball, and I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to hop the fence, but I didn't notice any obvious or unobvious cameras around. And I met this random Slovenian tourist who came up to the fence to take a picture, and we had a whole discussion about it. And I explained to him what I was doing, and he's like, screw it, man. He goes, just hop the fence. He's like, there's nobody here with a gun. He's like, there's no cameras. He's like, so I hopped over the fence and was able to grab it. And then he and I just had a great discussion about travel and Cypriot politics, and talked about all sorts of stuff. One thing that I was just informed, I was asking a local about all the derelict homes here in the old city. Like these here that just look, they're completely kind of makeshift boarded up, and I was told that very often these are the homes of Turkish Cypriots, and that the reason why they aren't inhabited or kind of squatted in or taken over in one manner or another is because then there would be a reciprocal action on the Turkish-occupied side of Nicosia, whereby then the Turkish Cypriots or Turks proper could then say, well, the Greeks took our old homes, you know, in southern Nicosia, and so therefore we're going to take the Greek homes, and that it could sort of re-inflame the dispute. So it's better to have these places just in limbo for the last about 5 decades. Here we are. It is the actual final election day here in Nicosia, and I am walking out to see what I could see. I've got a couple of very loose ideas. Unlike a war or some sort of disaster, an election isn't generally a very visual event. It's more of an intellectual exercise in terms of covering it as a story. So, not sure what I'm going to get as far as visual content, but I've got ideas of going by a polling place, and I found one of the front runners, Andreas Mavroyiannis, the left-wing candidate. I found his office on Google Maps, so I'm going to try and find it. The center-right candidate, Nikos Christodoulidis, I can't find anything on his headquarters, so see what I can see. Just happened to be walking by the embassy of the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, which is one of my primary destinations later on this journey as I'm hustling around Nicosia looking for images. I just met some really friendly guys at the headquarters of the left-wing candidate, Mavroyiannis, and they are trying to point me to where the other campaign headquarters that I could not find the address on Google, which is nearby, and they also gave me some hints about where I could find a polling station, and they said that I should come back to their offices tonight around 5 o'clock, where they're building a giant flat screen TV for people to watch the results, and the election is neck and neck, so it should be pretty exciting. Just by a stroke of luck, I ended up going down to, I wasn't able to find Christodoulidis' office, and I went down to the presidential palace where they were actually having a little ceremony for Turkish Cypriot victims of the earthquake outside Gaziantep in southeastern Turkey. And I ended up meeting with somebody from one of the embassies here. I will leave out which one, just for confidentiality, but he was nice enough to give me a ride and drop me off at the Christodoulidis headquarters. So kind of all worked out, a bit of serendipity. One of the questions that I think has presented itself to me in my couple of weeks here on the island is the idea of what is Europe in very much a 21st century context. So the other day I was taking the bus from Larnaca back here to Nicosia, and I met this wonderful old-timer who was telling me a lot of his life story about fighting in the war and all sorts of different things, and we ended up getting to the present, and he told me that he witnessed the beaching of a migrant boat that had come from, according to his telling, from the Turkish-controlled north side of the island. And we were talking about the human trafficking that's going on between Turkey proper, Turkish Northern Cyprus, and here the Republic of Cyprus and the Greek majority south. And he was saying that he believed that the Turkish Cypriot authorities were telling migrants, you can go to Europe, which is their way of saying by hook or by crook you can cross the green line, depending on how much you pay the human traffickers. So there's some ways where you can claim asylum crossing the green line here in Nicosia, and then there are other ways where you end up on a boat actually risking your life in the Mediterranean in the middle of the night to sort of crash ashore here on the Greek side. And one of the things that he said to me that was that was really interesting was, you know, when people cross the green line and they appear to be economic migrants, once they claim political asylum or refugee status, the Greek Cypriot government is obligated to take them in, and it may take a year or even years to process their case. And he said part of what complicates this issue is that a lot of Greek Cypriots, like himself, who were originally from the north, were once refugees. And so there is sort of in his telling, there's sort of a collective guilt of sorts that if people claim to be refugees here in Cyprus, even if they are from countries that are not at war with themselves or at war with a neighboring country, because of the human rights standards of the European Union, that the Greek Cypriots, unlike their Turkish counterparts in the north, are obligated to take people in, hear their stories, and give them government benefits. And so there are quite a lot of dynamics going on within the sort of ad hoc globalization of the island, which is complexifying it far more than just ethnic Greeks, ethnic Turks, and Turkish settlers. Another interesting thing I've noticed about Cyprus in terms of the linguistic aspect of things is that sort of what separates it from its other northern Mediterranean neighbors like Greece, Italy, Spain, and the like, is that because Cyprus was a former British colony until not all that long ago, it only became independent in 1960. And it's got two areas that are still part of the UK, the sovereign base areas of Akrotiri and Dikelia, that the English language and sort of a Commonwealth past binds modern Cyprus with a lot of the people who've been migrating here from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Ghana, the Gambia. And so English, rather than Greek, is more of a linguistic unifier, and I think that would also apply to the Filipinos and Filipinas that are here, as that was once a colony of the United States. Well, we're still getting used to the idea of saying the term Europe in terms of a political bloc, an economic union, and kind of United States of Europe, if you will, for lack of a better term. I feel like one of the things that actually defines Europe is the idea of Christendom, which is that I feel like before the advent and adoption and spread of ancient Christianity, that Europe, you could say, was a gaggle of warring tribes. It wasn't a group of modern, Protestant or Catholic majority, or in this case Orthodox majority nation states. It was tribe against tribe. There was no idea before the Treaty of Westphalia. There wasn't the idea of a modern nation state with hard defined borders. And so one thing to keep in mind here is, like here in Cyprus, is that because this is sort of a bridge between the Levant and Europe in terms of both physical and cultural geography, and this is a Maronite church of Lebanese Christians, or Christians who originated in Lebanon and may have lived in Cyprus for generations. And this is known as the plaque next to me says, this is a church for the Christians of the East. And so you can kind of keep in mind that we think of the idea of Christendom as sort of a Western idea, but Christianity, of course, as we all know, originated in the East. You can call it the Near East if you like, but it's the East. If you believe in the sort of the ethereal concepts of East and West, in terms of values, cultures, and languages and that sort of thing. So now it is the evening here, and I am fast walking through Nicosia city center back to the two campaign headquarters to see what's the deal with the exit polls and which of the two candidates is ahead. I don't know if there's going to be excitement. I'm not quite sure. what to expect. It'd be interesting if I end up having to run from one office to the other, if it turns out, you know, depending on who's winning. So see what happens when I get there. Okay, just arrived, and some of the results are being broadcast here in this little square.
Του συνόλου των εγγεγραμμένων εκλογέων. Δηλαδή 405.086 πολίτες.
Well, obviously I don't speak Greek, but the mood here seems kind of somber, and I think they're predicting a Christodoulidis victory, and I'm watching it here at the Mavroyiannis headquarters. So I'm debating whether I should run down the hill, if I can remember where it is, in the dark, and see if there's a different vibe down there. So now I am trying to speed walk to the other campaign headquarters to see what I can find out down there. Okay, I hear fireworks going off outside the Christodoulidis headquarters, and I see a bunch of police sirens, so I think I'm heading in the right direction. Okay, there is a much different energy here. All the media is here. It's a completely different vibe. So I think we're waiting for Christodoulidis to make a statement to the press. That's sort of what I don't speak Greek, but that's what I'm assuming is going on. It's just settling in. I can't believe that I'm here and that I made it. 2 Sundays ago, I was struggling to leave New York and worried I was going to make the flight. And even if the rest of this trip fails, this was a success. The energy here is amazing. That's why I love the Mediterranean world. So on the screen is Mavroyiannis, from whose headquarters I just came, and I think he's conceding the election.
Απόψε τελειώνει ένα μακρύ αλλά ωραίο ταξίδι. Ένα ταξίδι όπου είχα τη χαρά να γνωρίσω και όχι μια φορά παραμένω ενεργός στον αγώνα για το κοινό καλό και την επανένωση της πατρίδας μου. Ευχαριστώ όλες και όλους.
So much energy here.
Και έχουμε ξανασυναντηθεί με...
There he is, the new president of the Republic of Cyprus.
Και είναι μυστικό και του εξωτερικού προσανατολισμού της Κυπριακής Δημοκρατίας. Φυσικά με τον Έλληνα Πρωθυπουργό, την πρόεδρο της Δημοκρατίας, τον φίλο μου τον Έλληνα Υπουργό Εξωτερικών.
Well, I have to say that was pretty damn exciting. The peaceful transition of power in a quasi-Western democracy, quasi-Eastern. That was just a really good feeling, just being there. Just finding the story tracking down where I needed to be. A little bit of adrenaline involved. And I was less than a meter away from the new president at one point. So all in all, today was a damn good day. And I think once I get these couple of articles commissioned done that I have planned, then I can move on to the next destination, which will probably be someplace far more troubled than here on Cyprus.